In episode 7, BlueRiver decided what water-related issues needed to be addressed and where those actions should be integrated. In episode 8, BlueRiver selected the priorities that deserved formal objectives, targets, plans, and indicators. Now we move to a different question. What must happen in daily work so those decisions actually become real? That is the role of operational control. Operational control is where the EMS leaves the planning table and enters production, cleaning, maintenance, utilities, procurement, contractor management, and supervision. So, this episode is about moving from planned action to standard work. This distinction is important. Episode 7 was about management decisions. It helped BlueRiver decide whether an issue should become a routine control, a compliance control, an objective, a supplier requirement, an emergency measure, or a future project. Episode 8 was about performance improvement. So it helped BlueRiver define objectives, targets, plans, and indicators. Now, episode 9 is different. It's about execution. It asks what exactly must happen in the workplace. What must operators do? What must maintenance check? What must utilities monitor? What must contractors follow? What must supervisors verify? What evidence is created when the control is performed? That is the value of operational control. Now, there is a dangerous gap in many management systems. So, the organization determines significant aspects, it defines actions, it creates objectives, it assigns responsibilities, but daily work does not really change. Operators continue to work as before. Contractors receive the same instructions as before. Cleaning cycles remain the same. Maintenance routines do not include the new checks. And monitoring is not linked to escalation. Now, operational control closes that gap. It translates decisions into rules, checks, limits, routines, responsibilities, and records. So the question is no longer what should we do? The question is, how will this be controlled every time the work is performed? And this table shows the real purpose of episode 9. So in planning, BlueRiver may decide to reduce cleaning in place losses. But operational control asks, so what is the approved cleaning in place recipe? What are the rinse limits? What happens when a cycle is repeated? Who reviews the exception? In planning, BlueRiver may decide to control wastewater discharge. Okay, yes, but operational control asks, where do we sample? How often? What are the alarm limits? What happens before we reach the legal limit? Who escalates? In planning, BlueRiver may decide to control contractors, but operational control asks what work permit is required, who protects the drain, who supervises the work, what evidence confirms that the control was applied. Now, this is the movement from intention to standard work. One of the strongest ways to make operational control practical is to define operating criteria. Operating criteria are the limits, conditions, rules, or expectations that describe acceptable operation. For BlueRiver, these may include approved cleaning in place recipes, maximum rinse times, chemical dosing ranges, expected water use per line, wastewater operating ranges, inspection frequencies, and drain protection requirements. These criteria matter because vague control is, weak control. So if people do not know what acceptable operation looks like, they cannot consistently control the process. Operational control becomes stronger when expectations are specific. Operational control is also about defining control points and triggers. So, a control point is where BlueRiver checks whether the process is under control. A trigger is the condition that requires action. So, for example, BlueRiver may monitor wastewater pH, but that is not enough. It should also define the expected range, the warning level, the escalation level, who must be informed, what action is taken, and what record is kept. And the same applies to water consumption, cleaning in place cycles, chemical storage inspections, contractor work, and drought restrictions. So, good operational control answers the question before the problem occurs. What happens if this moves outside the expected range? Now, let us take cleaning in place. In episode 8, BlueRiver may have defined an objective to reduce cleaning in place losses. But that objective only becomes real when it changes standard work. Cleaning in place standard work may include approved cleaning recipes, defined rinse times, chemical dosing parameters, validation of cleaning effectiveness, operator checks, and maintenance of sensors and valves. It should also define what happens when the cycle is repeated or extended. Is the exception recorded? Who reviews it? Is it a cleaning problem, an equipment problem, a sensor problem, or an operator training issue? And this is where water efficiency becomes process discipline. Wastewater discharge is a good example of the link between compliance and operational control. A permit limit is not just a document. It should become a control system. BlueRiver should define the sampling point, sampling frequency, parameters monitored, operating range, alarm limits, legal limits, pre-treatment checks, escalation rules, reporting responsibilities, and incident response. One useful distinction is between an alarm limit and a legal limit. So if BlueRiver only reacts when the legal limit is exceeded, well, it's already too late. Operational control should define earlier warning points so the organization can act before non-compliance occurs. Chemical storage becomes a water issue when a spill can reach drains, soil, groundwater, or surface water. So, operational control must be visible in the storage area. Are chemicals stored in secondary containment? Are incompatible products separated? Are containers closed and labeled? Are spill kits available? Are inspections performed? Are drains protected where needed? Do people know what to do if a container leaks? The objective is not only to have a storage rule in a procedure, yes, that's important, but the objective is to prevent a release to water systems, and that requires standard work at the point of use. Contractor control is another area where operational control must be very concrete. In episode 7, BlueRiver may have decided that contractor work near stormwater drains needs to be controlled. Okay, yes, but in episode 9, we define what that means in practice. So, before work starts, the contractor may need an environmental induction, a work permit, drain protection, spill prevention measures, waste handling instructions, and supervisor control. During the work, BlueRiver may need supervision, housekeeping checks, and spill response readiness. And after the work, the area may need to be checked, photographed, and signed off. This is where the phrase control or influence, yes, becomes practical. Episode 7 may assign an owner. Episode 9 needs to clarify roles at the point of work. So, for example, the operator follows the cleaning in place recipe and records exceptions. Maintenance repairs leaks, checks valves, and maintains sensors. Utilities monitors wastewater parameters and reacts to alarms. Warehouse personnel inspect chemical storage areas. And the site supervisor controls contractor work near drains. And procurement includes environmental requirements in contracts or supplier instructions. And the environmental management reviews trends, compliance evidence, and recurring problems. So, operational control works when the right people know their role in the control system. Operational control should create evidence naturally. So this evidence is not paperwork for its own sake. It helps BlueRiver understand whether the controls are working. So cleaning in place records show whether the approved recipe was followed. Water meter readings show whether consumption is changing. Abnormal consumption reviews show whether deviations are investigated. Wastewater lab results and pH trends show whether discharge is controlled. Chemical storage checklists show whether containment and labeling are maintained. Contractor permits, photos, and sign-off show whether controls were applied before, during, and after work. Evidence is the memory of the control system. Now, operational controls should not be frozen. They must be reviewed when conditions change. So, a new product may require different cleaning. A new chemical may change wastewater characteristics. Increased production may increase water withdrawal and wastewater volume. A new contractor may introduce new risks. A new discharge limit may require tighter operating criteria. A drought restriction may require new water priority rules. And an incident or near miss may show that the current controls is not strong enough. So, BlueRiver should define change triggers. When these triggers occur, the question is, do our current controls still work under the new conditions? And for this episode, the working tool is a water standard work control sheet. This is different from the action planning matrix in episode 7. Episode 7 helped BlueRiver decide what needed to be addressed and where it should be integrated. This tool defines how the work is actually controlled. So for each activity, BlueRiver defines the operating criterion, the control point, the trigger or escalation rule, the role responsible at the point of work, and the evidence created by the process. So this is the translation layer between management intention and daily discipline. Now, here's how the tool could look for BlueRiver. For cleaning in place, the operating criterion is the approval recipe and rinse limit. Okay, the control point is the cleaning in place cycle record. A repeated cycle triggers review. And for wastewater discharge, the operating criterion is that pH and chemical oxygen demand remain within the operating range. And the control point is the sampling point. An alarm level triggers investigation before the legal limit is breached. And for chemical storage, the operating criterion is that containers are stored in containment. The control point is the weekly inspection. A leak or missing label triggers immediate correction. For contractor pipe repair, the operating criterion is that drains are protected before work starts. The control point is the work permit. If there is no protection, the work does not start. And for production increase, The operating criterion is that water and wastewater capacity must be reviewed before change. So is there a capacity gap? Approval is held until the risk is addressed. And this is operational control, really operational control. The output of this episode is a water standard work control sheet. This tool helps BlueRiver move from planned actions to standard work. It defines the operating criteria, control points, triggers, escalation rules, roles, and evidence that make water-related operational control visible in daily work. So at this point, BlueRiver has not only identified water issues, compliance obligations, risks, opportunities, objectives, and actions. It has also translated them into how work should be controlled. Well, but even good controls can fail. A chemical can spill, a drain can block, a wastewater system can overflow, a contractor can make a mistake, a fire can generate contaminated fire water, a drought restriction can disrupt normal operations. So the next question is, what if something goes wrong? And that takes us naturally to emergency preparedness and response. But before that, let us check in episode 10, training and awareness. So, operational control is where environmental management becomes real. It's not enough to have registers, plans, objectives, and indicators. The real test is what happens every time the work is performed. Every time a cleaning in place cycle runs, every time wastewater is sampled, every time chemicals are stored, every time a contractor works near a drain, every time production volume changes. Operational control turns environmental intention into daily discipline. So, the practical question is, what must happen every time the work is performed? So, if BlueRiver can answer that question clearly, the EMS is no longer just a management system on paper. It becomes part of the way the organization works. Now, these are the next episodes. So you have episode 10, competence and awareness at the point of work. Episode 11, emergency preparedness and response. Episode 12, monitoring, measurement, analysis, and compliance evaluation. And episode 13, nonconformity, correction, and corrective action. So what do we do when control is not working? Now, if your organization needs support with the transition to ISO 14001:2026, or if you are looking to improve your current environmental management system, perhaps I can help. I also support organizations that are starting from the beginning and want to implement ISO 14001 in a practical, business-oriented way. You can contact me using the email shown on the screen or send me a direct message on LinkedIn.